The Clean Futures Act will help us accomplish this goal to meet the climate crisis head on and at the same time support American jobs. The world is going electric, and the United States has had the opportunity to lead the way. As the automotive industry makes this shift, there are going to be risks and there are going to be opportunities. So we've got to make sure we get the policies right to not only compete and remain the global leader for the next era, which I'm very dedicated to, but to also ensure that we don't leave the finest workforce in the world behind, the American worker. I'm pleased that the Clean Future Act includes two bills I've authored, the USA Electrify Forward Act and the ATVM Future Act. Together, these bills will expand the ATVM program to include medium and heavy-duty vehicles and modernize the ATVM to help develop supply chain manufacturing in the United States with American workers. And the legislation will update domestic manufacturing conversion grant programs to include plug-in electric vehicles and components. I'd like to first start with the UAW, Mr. Nasser. I'd like to focus on EV production, the current state of EV production in the United States and our workforce. From your testimony, you make the case that the United States is falling behind in the production of electric vehicles. First, can you please elaborate more on the specific headwinds auto workers are facing, referenced in your written testimony?
Sure, and thank you for the question. I first of all just want to point out that we do have members that are making, battery electric vehicles, plugins and the sort, and we need to just make sure that we're creating a whole lot more of those good jobs. But I just want to say that just because it's a new job and a battery job or from a startup, we cannot say with confidence that those are good jobs. That is yet to be seen. When you're talking about what our membership and manufacturing workers are dealing with, and we're still in the middle of this pandemic, first of all, and blue collar folks have to take it really hard in there. They don't have the luxury of working at home like we do. Then you look at the situation where, we have this massive, supply chain problem with semiconductors, which just points to the fact that we really have neglected our supply chains for a long time. Not to mention we have tax policies that are, costing us jobs and are perverse. We have a lot that needs to be done. We also need to train more folks to come into manufacturing. So I would just say this, at the end of the day, what we need to do is we have to make sure that we're attaching government funding to labor standards and making sure it works in the U.S. If we do not, the trends are going to continue in the wrong direction. And there's no assurance that the auto jobs of the future are going to be the good jobs that we're accustomed to. There's no assurance of that whatsoever. So I hope that helps with the question.
So what happens if Congress doesn't invest in the EV infrastructure?
I think quite simply what's going to happen is first of all, you're going to have an EV market that's continuing to be dominated by the very wealthy. You're not going to have cars becoming cheaper and more affordable, and you're not going to have the adoption rates, and then you're going to have less manufacturing of it here. Most vehicles made, are sold where they're close to where they're made. We're going to lose supply chains. A lot of bad trends are just going to continue and become actually much, much worse, especially over time as more of the fleet becomes EVs and fewer percentage becomes the traditional ICE engine. So this is the chance to act. If we don't act, I'm convinced that we will be regretting it for many, many, many decades.
I've got 1 minute left, and I was going to ask both you and Mr. Britton this. So I'll ask Mr. Britton this, but I'm going to do more questions for the record. Mr. Britton, could you speak to the importance for your members of expanding programs and modernizing the ATVM to enable component manufacturers to participate in the program?
Yeah, ATVM has been part of a progenitor story for many companies in the advanced vehicle space, so it's very important. Certainly your upgrades to the program to expand it to medium and heavy duty, where there's more innovation to be had, and companies like Proterra that I think are very interested in the program. So I think it's really, really important. The one thing I'd also add is if there's any doubt about the economic potential here, I think folks need to go back and look to 2 weeks ago where the GM LG Chem advanced battery plant was announced in Tennessee. The Republican Tennessee governor called it the single greatest investment in economic development in the state's history. So I think there is a consensus here that we have to take this seriously, but the rewards are not elusive. We can see the material progress on economic development and job creation, and something that we can really achieve. And I think your leadership is driving that through programs like ATVM.
So I have more questions, but I'd like to submit for the record, Mr. Chairman. I'd also like to request unanimous consent to submit 2 documents into the record. The first is a recent background report by the Blue-Green Alliance, United Steelworkers, UAW, and the AFL-CIO that reviews factors likely to drive U.S. job gains and job losses related to the electrification of the U.S. and global vehicle fleet. And the second is a recent joint letter by the Alliance for Automotive Innovation, MEMA, and UAW to President Biden that highlights the need for a comprehensive national vision and strategy for electrification and the policies that will help us get there.